Hello guys, welcome back. In this video, we will try to understand event bubbling and then event capturing. And along with that, we will also see what are stop propagation and then stop immediate propagation methods. So for understanding this, I'm going to just create a skeleton of HTML with three nested elements. So coming here, I'll create a parent element with a class of parent. So parent, I'll call this one, and then another element is going to be child. And within this, I'll create a simple button, and this is going to have click me. Okay, so for displaying them properly, I'm going to just make some styling for this. So I'll target this parent and I'll give a padding of, let's say, 50 pixels, and then a background color of orange, and then a width of maybe 500 pixels. Similarly, I'm going to just target this child element, and then for this also I'll give the same padding of 50 pixels, then background color of tomato, and no width, let it be have 100% width. And I will also target the button element. So for this, again, I'll give some padding of 10 pixels, then border of none, right? So now we are able to see the UI very clearly that we have three elements, one inside the other, correct? So for understanding this event phase, firstly, we need to know what is the event life cycle, which means whenever we make an event on any HTML element on the UI, what is its life cycle, like from where to where it goes. That is what we need to understand, and then later we can start attaching the listeners, event listeners for individual elements, and we can see them practically. Okay, so for understanding this, let me just draw one skeleton of one down tree structure, so that from there I can explain. So firstly, in the DOM tree, we will always have the root tag, which is HTML, correct? And inside that, we will be having two other elements. One is the head and the other one is body. And inside this body, for the HTML, which I have written just now, I have one division element, which is with a parent. And inside that, I have child. And then inside that, I have the button, right? So let me just draw that. I have a div with a class of parent, and inside this I have another div with a class of child, and inside this finally I have the button. So this is how the hierarchy or the skeleton I have written in the HTML, right? Now let's try to understand the life cycle of an event. So usually whenever you make any event like click event or double click event, or focus event, or for the input element and then change event, or any mouse events, or right, all these kinds of events whenever you make, right, what happens is every event follows three phases of its life cycle. Every event will have three phases in its life cycle. So the first phase is capturing phase, capturing phase, and the second one is target phase, and the third one is the bubbling phase. Bubbling phase. Now the thing is, whenever we start learning the event listeners, we only learn this bubbling phase, and we also learn this target phase, because we often don't use this capturing phase anytime. So that's the reason everyone will learn only this target phase and then bubbling phase. That is the reason we will face little difficulty in understanding the capturing phase after some time. But actually, in every event lifecycle, these three phases will be there: capturing, target, and then bubbling phase. And the order of these phases will be capturing phase first, and then the target phase, and then the bubbling phase. So to understand these three phases, I'll just take one example within this particular DOM tree only. And one clarity you need to get is the target element means that on whichever the HTML element the event has occurred. That is what the target element means. It may not be the event attached source element, but the target element means wherever that event is occurred. For example, if I talk about click event, if I click clearly on this button, then the target element will be the button element. If I click on this division of child class, then the target element will be that element only. If I click on the parent, then that will be the target element. So target means wherever that event is occurred, right? Now let's say I just made a click on this particular child. Just assume that I made a click on this particular child. So in the UI, the child is nothing but this tomato element. Okay, so whenever I make a click somewhere over here on the child element, what happens is the event will goes through the capturing phase first, right? What is capturing phase? Capturing phase means the event will start from its root ancestor and comes towards it. So the ancestors of this child element will be the parent, body, and then HTML. So the root ancestor will be HTML. So what happens is in the capturing phase, so the event will first be triggering this one. Whenever I make a click on this child element, the event will be informed to this root ancestor, and then it will later be informed to the body element, and later it will be informed to the parent element, and then later it will be informed to the child element. Okay, so that is what happens in the capturing phase. So the violet color one is completely the capturing phase. So always it starts with the root ancestor wherever we make that event, right? And it falls down until it reaches the target element. And whenever it reaches the target element, right, then the target phase comes, which is basically executing all the listeners of this particular target element. So whenever it comes to the target phase, it executes all the listeners of this particular element. Because in JavaScript, what we can do is whenever you add the add event listener method, you can add multi listeners to any single element, right? So you're in the target phase, all the target element events will be triggered. All the target elements event. Now, what happens is now we are done with the capturing phase, and it also executes all the events of target element. Then later what happens is the bubbling phase comes into picture. So in the bubbling phase, what happens is the event will be now informed from the target element to its ancestors one after the other. So firstly, once it received the target element, the event will again be informed to the first ancestor, and then once this one receives this event, then it will be informed to its next ancestor, and then this one will be informed to its next ancestor, just like this. So wherever we started, wherever the event is started, and there only the event is going to end always, right? And in this path, the turning point will be the target element wherever that event is occurred, right? So this is by default there in every browser, but just the thing that we don't learn this particular capturing phase. Okay, so in simple diagram, it will be like a reflection of a light. So for example, if this is my target element, let me just change this pen. Let us say if I have the target element, this is the target element. What happens is the event will start coming from its root ancestor, and then it will be informed to the target element, and then the event will again go to the root ancestor, just like this. Now the right side of this one is what we call as bubbling phase, bubbling phase, and the left side of it we call as capturing phase. Okay, so now coming to whenever you attach an event listener to any HTML element, you can attach it like a capturing listener or you can attach it like a bubbling listener. That's up to you. So there is one extra parameter that we need to pass to make it as a capturing listener or to make it as a bubbling listener. Now let us get into this coding part. So I'm going to straightforward extract all these three elements into my JavaScript. So firstly, I'll extract the parent. I'll use the query selector. And since it has the class name parent, I can just extract it this way. And I can also extract two other elements. And this one is going to be child. And this one is going to be button. Right? And button is not having any class name called button. So it's a tag name selector. And once I made this selection, I'm going to attach straightforward 3 click listeners for each of these elements. Okay, so parent dot add event listener, and I will attach a click listener and parent clicked. Similarly, the same event I will be adding for the button as well as child. So child is clicked and then button is clicked, right? Now I have added 3 event listeners for all the 3 elements which are visible on the UI. So if I make a click on this particular button right now, you see what happens. I made a click on it, and you see button clicked is triggered first, which means the click listener of this one is triggered, and then its parent one is triggered, and then its parent one is triggered. So basically button, child, and then parent, which means we are only able to see the bubbling phase, which means the target element's event listener is triggered, and then its parent one is triggered immediately, and then its parent one is triggered immediately, right? So we are only able to see the bubbling phase, because by default all the events are added to the bubbling phase only, not to the capturing phase. Okay, but whenever you add the event listeners like this, one can also pass one extra parameter or one extra argument. So for this add event listener method, we pass the event type, and we pass the listener function, which is a callback, and then we can also pass one extra parameter, that's a boolean parameter. Okay, and this boolean parameter represents whether it's a captured event or it's a bubbled event. So by default it will be having a false value. False stands for bubbling event or bubbled event. So by default this one also has the false value. By default this one also has the false value. Now you can see, even though I've added false because those are the default values, there will be no change in the output, right? Now let me just make this one as a true. Now if I make it as a true, now this particular event listener is not a bubbled event listener, or it's not going to get executed in the bubbling phase. Then when will it be executed means it will be executed in the capturing phase only, because it's a captured event now. It is a captured event now because we just added the is capture equal to true value. So when it is true value, which means the event listener is going to get executed only in the capturing phase, not in the bubbling phase. Now let me just save this, and you see this time let's try to analyze this before that. So we have parent, and we have child, and we have button, and then again we have child, and we have parent, like this, correct? So I'm just taking this analogy of this particular reflection diagram so that you can understand it. Now there is one event listener for this button, which is a bubbling event, and there is another event for this child also, which is again bubbling event. But for parent we do not have a bubbling event, but we have a capturing event. For child we do not have a capturing event, but we have a bubbling event, right? Because you can see for every element I added one event listener. So for parent it is a capturing listener, for child it is a bubbling listener, for button also it's a bubbling listener, right? Now just assume that I made a click on this particular button. So when I make a click on this button, this will be my target element, right? When I made a click on this button, it will be my target element. Now the event always starts from the root ancestor, and then it comes to the target, and then it goes back to the root, right? This is what the event life cycle. So the first phase is capture phase, and then target phase, and then bubbling phase. So firstly, whenever I make a click on this button, it's going to inform this parent in which phase? In the capturing phase. The event will be informed as soon as we make a click on this button. The event will first be informed to the parent, but what is the phase? The phase is the capturing phase. So do this button do this parent has a captured event listener? Means yes, because we added a event listener, that's a captured event listener. So that event will be triggered, which means in the console we'll be able to see parent clicked first. Parent clicked. So this is going to be our first output, because this event was a captured event, so that can be executed only in the capture phase. Now the event will be transferred to the child. Now the child do not have any captured event listener attached to it, so it will just go away, and then it will be informed again to the button. Now the button also do not have any capturing event listener, and in the target phase the button's captured listeners will be executed first. But as of now the button do not have any captured event listener, so it is just going to trigger the bubbling event listener. So the second output is going to be button clicked. Button clicked. And then Now the event will move to the bubbling phase. So now the event will be transferred to the child again. Now we are in the bubbling phase, right? We are in the bubbling phase now. So when we are in the bubbling phase, look at this. The child element has a bubble event listener. It was not having the captured event listener, but it has a bubbled event listener. So this time what happens is this will be the bubbling event listener, whatever was there, that will be triggered. So the third output is going to be uh, child clicked because it was a bubbled event listener, so it will be executed only in the bubbling phase, and then the event will be transferred to the parent. But currently the parent do not have any bubbled event listener. It has a captured event listener, and that was got executed in the capture phase only. But this time the parent do not have any bubbled event listener, so nothing will be executed here. So this is how the entire life cycle of an event occurs: capturing phase, target phase, and then bubble phase. Let me just show you the output of this. I'll click on this button, and you see parent clicked is triggered, which means this one got triggered because it has the captured event listener, and then child do not have any captured listener, and then this one has a bubble listener, and then it moved back to the parent. So parent button and then child. This time what I will do is I will attach one more event for this one. For the parent alone, I will attach one more event listener. And this time this message is going to be parent capture phase and parent bubble clicked. Okay, so look at this very carefully. The parent element now has two event listeners, both are click event listeners, but one event listener is added for the capturing phase, and the other event listener is added for the bubbling phase, right? So totally I have four event listeners. Now let's see what happens this time. Let me just quickly erase this one. Right. So this time I have again the button. Let me draw this button, and then child is there, and then child is there, and then parent is there, and parent is there. Right. So again, assume that I'm going to make a click on this button. So when I make a click on this button, what happens? The event lifecycle starts from the root ancestor and again back to the root ancestor. It starts at the root ancestor and then it goes till the root ancestor. Actually, here I'm only writing till this parent, but it will also be informing to body as well as HTML. Just for understanding purpose, I'm just writing only till parent, but still it will be informed to the body as well as HTML. But as of now, we do not have any event listeners for the body or HTML. Nothing will be affected. So now in the capturing phase, firstly, let us figure out how many events that does the parent has. Look at this. The parent element has two event listeners. One is the captured event listener, and then other one is bubbled event listener. So it has one captured event listener and it has one bubbled event listener. Now coming to this child, the child ka value is false, which means it has only one bubbled event listener, right? So there is no captured event listener, but there is a bubbled event listener. Now for button, there is only one bubbled event listener. One bubbled event listener, right? So what happens now? The event will first be informed to the parent. It will be in the capturing phase. Always the capturing phase starts first. Okay, now in the capturing phase, the event will be informed to this one first. So for this, there is a capturing event listener, and that's going to straightforward print parent capture clicked. Okay, so that will be our first output. Parent capture click, right? And then the event will be propagated to its children, which is child. And we are in the capturing phase, and child do not have any capture event listener. So nothing will happen. The event will be transferred to the button. The button also do not have any capture event listener. So again, the event will be propagated to the bubbling phase. Now the button has a bubbling event listener. You can see the button has a bubbling event listener. So button clicked will be executed. So the second output is going to be button clicked. And then the event will be again propagated further to its parent, which is child. And now child have a bubbling event listener. So currently we are in the which phase? We are in the bubbling phase. This is the bubbling phase. Now when a child gets informed with a bubbling event, since it has a bubbling event listener, because you can see it has a false value, so this child clicked will be printed in the console. So the third output is going to be child clicked, right? And then the event will further be propagated to its parent. Now the parent also has another bubbling event listener. It was having already a capture event listener. Now it also has the bubbling event listener as well. So when this event in the bubbling phase is informed to the parent, again that event will also be executed, which is the bubbling event listener of the parent. So parent bubble clicked will also be executed. So the fourth output is going to be parent bubble clicked, right? Let me just show you this output quickly. I'll save this, and you see I made a click on this. So firstly, parents capture event is triggered. So from here it started from the parent, and then it was transferred to the tomato. Tomato does not have any capture listener, so it transferred to the button. Button also does not have any capture. And in the target phase, it again transferred to the bubble phase of this particular target element. So that's why button clicked is got executed. And then again, it propagated to the bubbling phase. And in the bubbling phase, it will be informed to the tomato. So that's why we got child clicked again. And then the event will further be informed to the orange element, which is the parent. So parent bubble is got clicked. So this is what the life cycle of every event looks like, every event that you take. Okay. Now for understanding this, I'll take one more example within this only. I'll do a little more modification on this. So for this button, I'm going to add another capture event listener. Okay. So this is capture click, and this is button bubble clicked. Okay. And for child, I only have one bubble event listener, right? Or else for child also I will add another bubble event capture event listener. So let me just pass through here, and then child this is capture clicked, so capture event. Okay, child capture, just like this. Now I have totally 6 event listeners for the 3 elements. Every element has a bubble click event listener and then a capture event listener. Now so let us see this time what happens again. Let me quickly erase this one. Right, now let me just draw this things again. We have the button, and button has a child parent, and then parent is also there, correct? And then for button again we have child. Just I'm drawing just to show you the capturing and then bubbling phase, and then parent. So this time again, imagine if I made a click on this particular element. If I made a click on this particular element, firstly capturing phase, target phase, and then bubbling phase. Remember this flow: capturing phase, target phase, and then bubbling phase. So firstly, the event before that we will finalize the number of events that each element has. So for parent we have one capture event listener and one bubble event listener. For child we have one capture event listener and one bubble event listener. For button we have one capture event listener and then one bubble event listener. So basically every element has two event listeners. One is a capture event listener and the other one is a bubble event listener. Now the capturing starts from the root ancestor, which in this case is parent. Of course, it will be again informed to HTML body as well, but we have only listeners for these 3 elements. So let us consider only these 3. Now, firstly, when event is in the capturing phase, let me just draw that line, capturing phase, right? So here the parent will be informed first, and the parent has a capture listener, right? So parent capture clicked will be the first output. Parent capture click will be the first output. Okay. And then the event will be propagated to its children because we are in the capturing phase. And then child capture clicked will be the second output. Child capture. And then the event will propagate it downwards. And this time we entered the event target phase or the target phase, which is the second phase. Now in the target phase, all the listeners of button will be executed. So it has one capture event listener and then one bubble event listener. So for the button, the capture event listener will be triggered first because we just came from the capture phase. So the third output would be button capture, and then the fourth output would be button bubble, button bubble, and then the fifth output now would be the event will again be propagated in the bubbling phase. Now we entered the bubbling phase. So this is the bubbling phase. Now in this, the event will be moved to its parent. So child also has one bubbling event listener. So that will be executed. So child bubble, child bubble. And then this event will further be transferred or propagated to its parent. So last time we are going to get this parent bubble. So overall, parent capture, child capture, button bubble, child bubble, and then parent bubble. So it's like a capturing phase, target phase, bubbling phase. Let me just show you. I save the file. Now you see I click on it. So parent capture, child capture, button capture. So it's fallen down from the root ancestor to the target element. And then button bubble, child clicked. I think I did not change this name, but yeah, it is child clicked. And then parent bubble clicked. Child bubble. So this is child bubble because we have the false value. Now you can see button capture and then button bubble, child bubble, and then parent bubble. So this is all about capturing and then a bubbling phase. This is the entire life cycle of any event. Now let's try to understand two other methods that we have are stop propagating and then stop immediate propagation, right? So the first method we will discuss is stop propagation. And then the second method is stop immediate propagation, right? So these two are very similar almost, but they have few minor differences. So let us try to see what are those methods. I'll comment all this code. So basically propagation means a transfer of event, maybe in the capturing phase or maybe in the bubbling phase. For example, in the capturing phase, firstly, the parent will receive the event, right? And then that event will be propagated to its children because we are in the capturing phase. Similarly, when the event is received by the tomato element in the bubbling phase, then the event will be propagated to its parent because we are in the bubbling phase. So basically, propagation means transferring of event either to its children when it is in the capturing phase or to its parent when it is in the bubbling phase. Simple. Now, stop propagation means that we can stop the propagation of the event so that the other event listeners will not be executed. That's it. To show it very simply, for the parent, I will add a capturing event listener, right? And this is a capture event listener, so I need to pass true here. And for child also, I will add a one event listener, which is again a capture event listener, child capture event. Okay. Now, what happens is, as of now, the button do not have any event attached to it. Though, when I make a click on it, as I told you that in the capturing phase, all its from the starting from the root ancestor, the event will fallen down to its children, right? Now you see, if I make a click on this button, what happens is the parent capture will be triggered first, and then the child, which is the tomato capture, will be triggered, right? Let me just click on it, and you see parent capture event and then child capture event. So before it executes the child capture event, I can also stop the event without propagating to its children within the parent itself. For doing that, In the parent event listener, we will capture the event object, and then using that event object, what we can do is we can call a method called stopPropagation, right? So whenever we call the stopPropagation method, the event will not be propagated. The event will not be propagated to its children or parent, depending on the capturing or the bubbling phase. Now you see, I stopped the propagation. So when I make a click on this click me, parent capture will be triggered, but it will be stopped propagating to its children. So the children's event listener will not be executed. Let me click on it. Now you see only parent capture is triggered, right? So this time I will comment this one. And let us say I also have another capture event listener for this one. So click, and then this is also going to take the event object. Second parent capture event. So this is also going to be capture event. Now the parent has, the parent element has two capture event listeners. One is the first. Let me just write it as first parent capture event listener. First parent capture event and second parent capture event. Now this time both are captured events only. And let's say when I make a click, this one will be executed first, and then this one, and then the child, right? Let me click on the button, and you see first parent event capture event, and then second parent capture event, right? Now in the first parent capture event, if I stop the propagation, what it will do is it will just stop the propagation. Uh, When I stop this propagation in the first parent capture event, what it will do is it will stop the propagation moving from the parent element to its children element in the capture phase. Just it stops the propagation moving to another element, right? But still this particular second parent capture event be executed. Let me just save this and I click on it. Now you see first parent capture event as well as second parent capture event. Both are executed. Just that the event is not transferred this time to its children, right? Now, if I call stop immediate propagation, stop, sorry, it's event dot stop immediate propagation. What this one do is this immediately stops with this event listener only. So this immediately stops not only moving the event to its children or maybe to its parent, but it will also stop executing the other event listener of the same element. So the parent element, though it has two event listeners now, but since we are stopping the immediate propagation here, we are stopping the propagation immediately here, it will not even trigger the another click event listener of the same element. So let me just save this. So this time if I click on this button, you see first parent capture is triggered and it did not allow the second parent capture event is to trigger. So that is what the difference between stop propagation and then stop immediate propagation. So in short, stop propagation will stop the event to be propagated to its children or to its parent depending on the capturing phase or in the bubbling phase. And then stop immediate propagation will just stop the event there itself without even executing the other event listeners of the same element. Okay. I hope you understood this entire flow. Thank you for watching.